Download the AllStar app. Make your picks for UFC fights, challenge your friends, level up and win prizes. Link in description. Get it now. Okay, John Jones, right? He's getting ready for, um, you know, his title fight against Stipe Miocic, and he always brings in the best sparring partners for himself. You know, what I mean, he's not a guy that does not spend money on a training camp. You know what I mean? Like he's very invested, and this is a very important fight for him. But we're not going to talk about that fight. We're talking about what Jones's coach said, Brandon Gibson, well known striking coach, John Bones Jones's striking coach, and he revealed that John Jones has been working with Olympic gold medalist Gable Steveson. And this is what he said: "The sky is the limit for Gable. He's a super athlete. He walked onto the Buffalo Bills without even playing football just this past week. We've seen him in the gym boxing with mitts, grappling, doing jiu-jitsu, ground and pound drills. He's incredible, and I have no doubt that he could become a heavyweight champ. There's a sense of pride I see in John Jones having some of these young greats come onto the room, where John also wants to coach them and lift them up." So basically, John has all these great sparring partners, and his coach is saying that John Jones might be thinking about coaching some of these guys into becoming, champions in MMA. Now, can you give us a little background on Gable Steveson? Obviously, he's an Olympic gold medalist. Right?
So he was fantastic, right? High school phenom. Immediately at the Division 1 level, went to the University of Minnesota, and that's important because that allowed him to work directly with a giant like Brock Lesnar, right? And so him and Brock seemed to have a good relationship, which opened the door for WWE. So the interesting thing about career paths with wrestling heavyweights, right, especially in the U.S., is we've had heavyweights that go into the NFL. We've had heavyweights that go into WWE, like Kurt Angle. The one that went into the NFL was Stephen Neal, and he was, plays for the Patriots. And then I think he was a world champion before he switched over to football. And then, or you can continue to pursue wrestling, but the downside is because wrestling doesn't have nearly as much money as any of those other career avenues, it's not a very long-term career decision if you are that incredible of an athlete. And so Gable Steveson, absolutely amazing athlete. For someone at that weight, at the heavyweight, to move like somebody who's 3, 4, 5 weight categories lower, it's like he's got footwork, he's got athleticism, he's ragdolling people who weigh more than 200 pounds. And so it's terrifying. His first overseas showing, like as an adult, was at the Olympic Games, and yeah, he smashed everybody. Had a very, very exciting finals match because, there was some almost this lack of world class experience at the freestyle wrestling level, at the world level, I mean. But he overcame it with the athleticism, with the tenacity, and he ended up winning. Like, he scored the winning takedown with like zero point 0.2 seconds left on the clock. It was one of the biggest wins I think the U.S. had in Tokyo in 2021. And so after that, I think, went back, won a Division 1 national championship, and then officially retired from wrestling after that, even though he was still, he still had like 2 years of eligibility. So he's sort of one of the biggest question marks in the wrestling world, because for somebody with his abilities and with all the career choices ahead of him, because with Brock, he's got the UFC connection, he's got WWE connections, he's already tried the NFL route. So, like, I think he's just kind of figuring out what makes the most sense for his career. And honestly, I think with his coordination, his footwork and stuff, he'd probably pick up striking pretty quickly too. And so the sky's the limit for this guy. Working under John Jones makes perfect sense for him if they can kind of establish a long-term relationship together.
Yeah, it'd be like a perfect coach,
Hmm.
perfect sparring partner
Yeah.
for Stevenson, right? So when you look at Stevenson in 2021, he signed with WWE, you
Hmm.
know, and he was released from his contract in May 2024. So he was with them for a 3 year period,
Hmm.
but didn't really gain much momentum. You know what I mean? He had a
Right.
couple of television appearances. I don't watch WWE. I
Mm.
don't know too much about it, but
Hmm.
like, you know, he tried to go there because that's where the big money is.
Yeah.
Seriously, like if he could do the Kurt Angle, like repeat that, you know,
Absolutely.
he would have been phenomenal. But it just didn't work out for him.
Right.
Maybe just, you know,
Yeah,
he
and
couldn't talk.
yeah, and I get the impression he's kind of in this phase where he's like, let me try this out for a couple months.
Mm.
Let me try this out for a couple of months. Hopefully, he's able to do that without burning any bridges, because like I'm assuming they're gonna, that kind of thing. You want long-term contracts,
Mm.
because like everyone else in those fields are like, this is my dream. I want to do this. I want to do it with my life. I want to do it long term, right? So for someone that incredible to come in and be like, oh no, I don't know if I want to do this for the rest of my life, but can I just try a couple months? There's there's potential for it to be off-putting to the wrong person. So he's got to navigate that really, really carefully. That he doesn't, that he keeps as many doors open as possible, the ones that he wants to keep open, anyways.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything about like him burning bridges. So it seems like he's kind of like dissolved contracts, you know, amicably.
Hmm.
And then, you know, went on to the Buffalo Bills and signed a 3 year deal with them. But then they released him 3 months later,
Hmm.
even though he's never played the sport. Like that's how talented he is, right? Where
Yeah.
they're signing you to a multiple year deal without even you having any experience. But they probably
Right.
figured out after 3 months that, you know, it's hard. It's gonna be hard for him to kind of fit into the team. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not like the Bills are like a extremely struggling team either.
Right.
But fighting, I think that's the answer. Now they say that Stevenson's focused on mixed martial arts.
Hmm.
I feel like with him, he could have like 1 or 2 fights, but it's gonna be hard for him to find fights.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah. Like amateur
yeah,
careers are just
amateur career
completely
is
out
over.
of.
Like
Yeah.
you're not getting any amateur fights against this guy.
Exactly.
And then also if you look at like lower level promotions, I don't think anybody would step up and face Stevenson.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Definitely not with his wrestling pedigree. And
is it
then
Stevenson or Steveson? Steveson.
Steveson.
Okay, I
Yeah.
keep saying Stevenson because I'm so used to Stevenson. But
Yeah, yeah,
Steveson,
it's an odd. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
maybe just did it on purpose.
Hmm.
But Steveson or Gable, like people like to call him.
Yeah, you can call him Gable.
I feel like this is the path that they could take with him, and
Hmm.
especially with John Jones, and
Yep.
of course he's gonna probably have some really good management as well. They go straight to the contender series and find a heavyweight that
I
has a
can see
bunch of
that.
fights
Right.
and have him fight like the Bo Nickel
Yeah, it would probably
style.
be a similar like Bo Nichols
Yeah,
situation.
and it's heavyweight too.
Yeah.
If he can get into the heavyweight division and just start
Right.
like just running through people like that, like especially with John Jones leaving, that
Hmm.
would fit in just perfect
Yeah.
for the UFC.
Right. Like I would argue like from just completely from a wrestling standpoint, his athleticism and his technique, his ability to put himself through like certain positions of high leverage, from a wrestling standpoint, significantly greater than John Jones. So like that kind of upside is terrifying, and like there's nobody in the heavyweight division from like a size or a strength standpoint that I would imagine can defend against Gable Stevenson's like takedowns. I've seen him ragdoll some of the biggest guys in, in wrestling, and he makes it look easy, and he can do that like it's crazy. You can watch someone that big take down another person like 7, 8, 9, 10 times in one match. One match being like 7 minutes, and it's like, how are you not tired? And how he's probably tired to be fair, but it's like, how do you do that 3 or 4 times over in the same tournament? Like that takes some crazy kind of conditioning. Like takes obviously pretty good technique to be able to do something like that. So he's quite technical. He's quite athletic. I'm assuming he trains very regularly. Probably keeps in pretty good shape. And so, yeah, it would be great to see him in MMA. I think he'd make a really big splash.
This is my prediction. I say he signs a fight for Contender Series in 2025. Fights twice. Even though he wins, and it could be spectacular, maybe it would be flawless, but they'll bring him back for another fight just to get another, just to get some more experience. Fight again. If he wins, sign him to a contract. Now the UFC has him under the roster. Now he could send matchups to fighters, and they can't really deny fighting him. You know what I mean? They'll be like, all right, you're fighting Gable
Right.
Steveson.
Yeah.
And I think that's the path that's gonna happen for Gable. I feel like he's already in talks with the UFC. You
I
know
would
what mean?
imagine. Yeah.
Because like, why would you not be?
Right.
Because like the NFL don't want him, WWE doesn't want him,
Right.
and WWE is something he could do again after he builds himself up. I think he
Mhm.
could build himself up, you know, with the UFC machine
Right.
to a level of like he's the next savior for the UFC heavyweight division. Like he's
Mhm.
the next great, and he's American as well.
Yeah.
We talked about that. Like
Yeah, and he's great behind a microphone.
yeah,
He can talk
and
shit.
bringing
He's-
back all the wrestlers, right? Because right now
Yeah.
there's not many wrestlers, American wrestlers, that are champions in
True.
UFC.
True. Yeah.
That's kind of like fading away, but
Yeah.
we see some of these individuals that are coming in now.
Right.
They could go and take over. You know what I mean? Bo
Yeah,
Nickel,
for sure.
middleweight division. You got Gable Steveson. He could run the heavyweight division. Like
Mhm.
he could. This guy has the style to where he might not even take much damage, and just run through.
He could do Habib stuff, but at
That's-
heavyweight.
That's
yeah.
what I'm saying. Like he
Uh-huh.
could be the Habib of the heavyweight division.
Right.
And just go in there and crush everybody. Because
Yeah.
we've seen how John Jones and his level of wrestling is not the same as Gable's, right?
Right,
And we
right.
see what John Jones did to Cyril Gahn, right?
Mhm,
And
yep.
he was out of his depth, Cyril Gahn. Like
Absolutely.
he was lost.
Yeah.
And Gable could toss people.
Right. Like I don't think it would take Gable that long to put on like a John Jones type of performance against like a Cyril Gahn and have that be like what you would regularly see out of him, for the next like several fights. I guess with the big boys, you do have to be careful with like knockout potential too. So if he figures out how to be defensively responsible and mitigate that, then yeah, his career could just skyrocket in the UFC.
Yeah, I think the people around him right now, like John Jones, they're gonna figure all that stuff out. And John Jones, one of the greatest minds
Yeah,
in the sport.
super
we've ever
analytical.
Seen, so
Right.
yeah, I'm excited to see what Gable can do. I think the UFC signs him, and then it's fucking rockets on his back and see what can happen.
Yeah.